Kirkwood, Missouri. January 12, 2007. FBI agents and local police officers stand outside apartment 40F at the Kirkwood apartment complex. They're here for a 13-year-old boy named Ben Ownby, kidnapped just 4 days earlier. The tip seems solid. The white Nissan pickup truck matches. This could be him. They knock. The door opens. And what they find inside changes everything. Not one missing boy. 2. Standing in that apartment, looking directly at the officers, is another child. Taller. Older. A teenager with sandy blonde hair. When they ask his name, he gives them an answer that sends shockwaves through the nation. Shawn Hornbeck. A name that has haunted Missouri for over 4 years. A name that represents every parent's worst nightmare. A name that, until this moment, many feared they would never hear spoken by a living voice again. Shawn Hornbeck disappeared on October 6, 2002, while riding his bike to a friend's house. He was 11 years old. Now he's 15. For 1,559 days, his parents searched. They plastered his face on missing person posters across the country. They founded a charity in his name. They begged psychics for answers and endured false hope after false hope. And all that time, while volunteers combed through woods and dragged lakes, while his mother visited police stations pleading for updates, while America mourned another stolen child, Shawn Hornbeck was alive. Living less than 70 miles from where he vanished. Hidden in plain sight. This is the story of an abduction that shattered a family. An investigation that went cold. A boy who survived the unthinkable. And a miracle that almost never happened. This is the astonishing true story of Shawn Hornbeck. Welcome to the Found Files, where the missing are never truly gone, and the found are never the same again. If you believe every disappearance hides a second story, hit subscribe right now. And before we begin, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Because this story will travel farther than you think. October 6, 2002. Richwoods, Missouri. It's a small unincorporated community in Washington County, the kind of place where neighbors know neighbors and children still ride their bikes freely along country roads. The morning dawned bright and clear, one of those perfect autumn Saturdays when the air turns crisp and the leaves begin their transformation into rust and gold. For 11-year-old Shawn Hornbeck, it was supposed to be an ordinary day. Shawn lived with his parents, Pam and Craig Akers, in a modest home surrounded by the rolling hills and thick woods of southern Missouri. This was rural America at its purest: sparse traffic, dense forests, and the kind of quiet that city dwellers can never truly understand. It was peaceful. Safe. The kind of place where parents still let their kids disappear for hours at a time, knowing they'd return home before dark. In October 2002, the nation was still reeling from recent high-profile abductions. Elizabeth Smart had been taken from her bedroom in Salt Lake City just 4 months earlier. Samantha Runyon had been kidnapped and murdered in California. But those tragedies happen in other places, to other families. Not here. Not in Richwoods. Shawn was a typical 11-year-old boy, energetic, friendly, with sandy blonde hair and blue eyes that sparkled with mischief. He loved riding his bike, playing with friends, and exploring the woods near his home. He was close with his parents, particularly his mother Pam, who describes him as a happy child who always had a smile ready. That Saturday afternoon, Shawn asked permission to ride his bike to a friend's house. It was a trip he'd made dozens of times before. Just a short ride down the rural roads he knew by heart. His parents said yes. Why wouldn't they? Shawn climbed onto his lime green mountain bike, said goodbye to his mom and stepdad, and pedaled away down the driveway. It was approximately 1:30 p.m. He would not come home. Somewhere along that familiar stretch of road between home and friendship, Shawn Hornbeck's world shattered. A white Nissan pickup truck prowled the rural roads of Washington County that afternoon. Behind the wheel sat 41-year-old Michael John Devlin, a pizza restaurant manager from the St. Louis suburbs. He had dark hair, glasses, and an unremarkable face. The kind of man who could blend into any crowd, invisible in his ordinariness. But Michael Devlin was hunting. He'd been driving these back roads, watching, waiting, looking for the right opportunity. And when he spotted an 11-year-old boy riding alone on a mountain bike, he found it. What happened next was deliberate. Calculated. Brutal. Devlin accelerated his truck and deliberately struck Sean from behind, knocking the boy from his bicycle. The impact sent Sean sprawling onto the pavement. Before the child could even process what had happened, before he could scream or run or fight, Devlin was out of the truck. He grabbed Sean. Pulled a gun. And in that moment, with cold steel pressed against a terrified child, Michael Devlin made his dark intentions clear. Later, Devlin would tell investigators exactly what he said to Sean in those first horrifying moments: "You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time." Sean Hornbeck was thrown into the white pickup truck. His lime green mountain bike lay abandoned on the side of the road. And just like that, an 11-year-old boy vanished from the face of the earth. No witnesses. No struggle that anyone saw. No dramatic chase. Just a predator, a victim, in a rural road that had suddenly become the scene of every parent's worst nightmare. The truck disappeared into the Missouri countryside, carrying Sean further and further from everything he knew. From his parents. From his home. From his life. In that truck, terrified and in shock, Sean had no way of knowing that his ordeal was just beginning. That he wouldn't see his family again for 4 years, 2 months, and 6 days. When Sean didn't arrive at his friend's house, concern rippled quickly into panic. His parents expected him back before dinner. When the sun began to set and Sean still hadn't returned, Pam Akers felt that primal maternal fear that something was terribly wrong. By early evening, they were making phone calls. Checking with friends. Retracing the route. And then they found it. The lime green mountain bike, lying on its side along the rural road. Abandoned. Pam Akers' world tilted on its axis. They immediately called the police. Washington County Sheriff's deputies arrived to begin what would become one of the most extensive searches in Missouri history. In those first critical hours, there was still hope. Still a belief that Sean had gotten hurt, or lost, or was hiding somewhere nearby, scared but safe. Search teams combed the surrounding woods through the night. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness, illuminating tree trunks and undergrowth. Volunteers called Sean's name again and again, their voices echoing through the hills. Police brought in tracking dogs. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging flew overhead at first light. They searched ravines. They dragged ponds. They investigated every hunting cabin, every abandoned structure within miles. But there was no sign of Sean Hornbeck. As the hours stretched into days, the horrible truth settled over Richwoods like a heavy fog. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a boy who got lost. This was an abduction. Someone had taken Sean. Someone had stolen him away. And they had done it so cleanly, so efficiently, that even with an entire community searching, there was no trail to follow. The only clue? A witness who recalled seeing a white pickup truck in the area around the time Sean disappeared. But without a license plate, without a clear description of the driver, it was almost nothing. A thread too thin to pull. In the first 72 hours after Sean's disappearance, law enforcement launched a massive operation. The FBI was called in immediately. This was clearly a child abduction, and every second counted. The Washington County Sheriff's Department established a command center. FBI agents from the St. Louis field office arrived to coordinate with local authorities. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was notified. Sean's photograph was distributed across the state and then across the nation. But this was 2002. The world was different then. The Amber Alert system existed, but it wasn't yet the nationwide instantaneous notification network it would become. There were no Ring doorbell cameras. No widespread dashboard cameras. No smartphones that could instantly share information. No social media to spread awareness virally. Investigators had to rely on old-fashioned detective work, interviews, phone tips, physical searches, in the hope that someone, somewhere, had seen something. Detectives interviewed everyone in the area. They tracked down every white pickup truck owner in the county. They investigated known sex offenders in the region. They pursued hundreds of tips from concerned citizens who thought they'd seen Sean or remembered something suspicious. Every lead turned into a dead end. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit created a profile of the likely abductor, probably a male, possibly someone who knew the area, someone who had been planning this or had taken advantage of an opportunity. But a profile without a name is just a theory. Dive teams searched bodies of water. Volunteers on horseback covered miles of rural terrain. The Missouri Highway Patrol set up roadblocks and checked vehicles. They distributed flyers at truck stops along every major interstate. Sean's face appeared on missing children websites, on milk cartons, on posters in shop windows. The case received local news coverage, then regional, then, briefly, national attention. But as the days turned to weeks, the media moved on to newer tragedies. The volunteer searches became less frequent. The daily tips slowed to a trickle. The case was going cold. Pam Akers refused to give up. While the world moved on, while investigators quietly shifted Sean's case to the cold case files, Pam kept searching. Every single day. She made it her life's mission to find her son. She and her husband Craig founded the Sean Hornbeck Foundation in 2003, dedicated to helping families of missing and abducted children. They organized search efforts. They raised awareness. They kept Sean's name alive. Pam visited the sheriff's department regularly, asking for updates, pushing for the investigation to continue. She contacted psychics, appearing on television shows devoted to paranormal investigation, desperate for any information that might lead to her son. In November 2003, one of those appearances would deliver a crushing blow. On the Montel Williams show, Pam sat across from celebrity psychic Sylvia Browne, hoping for guidance, for some glimmer of hope. Sylvia Browne was famous for her claimed ability to communicate with spirits and see beyond the veil of death. Browne's pronunciation was devastating. She told Pam Akers, on national television, that Sean was dead. That his body was in a wooded area near two jagged boulders. She provided specific details that sent Pam home to search areas matching that description. It was all false. Every word of it. Sean was alive and suffering, but Sylvia Browne's cruel lie planted seeds of doubt and despair in a mother's heart. Still, Pam continued searching. Even believing her son might be dead, she needed to bring him home. She needed closure. She needed to know. The foundation grew. They helped other families navigate the nightmare of having a missing child. They organized awareness campaigns. They pushed for better laws to protect children. And always, Pam kept Sean's memory alive. His room remained untouched. His photos stayed on the walls. At every Christmas, every birthday, every milestone he missed, the Akers family remembered their stolen boy. 4 years passed. Then 4.5. The public forgot Sean Hornbeck. But his mother never did. While his family searched desperately, while his mother drove rural roads looking for jagged boulders, while his face appeared on missing children databases across America, Sean Hornbeck was alive. He was less than 70 miles from home. In Kirkwood, Missouri, a suburb of St. Louis. Apartment 40F. A 2-bedroom unit in an ordinary apartment complex. Home to Michael Devlin and the boy he now called his son. The first month after the abduction was pure hell. Devlin tied Sean to a futon. Duct-taped his mouth. The abuse began immediately: sexual assault, psychological torture, death threats delivered with cold certainty. Devlin made it clear, if Sean tried to escape, he would kill him. If Sean told anyone who he really was, Devlin would murder his entire family. Sean believed him. How could he not? He was 11 years old, trapped with a monster, with no way out and no hope of rescue. But something strange happened as the months progressed. Devlin didn't keep Sean locked away. Instead, he created a twisted parody of normal life. Sean was allowed to go outside to make friends in the apartment complex. He attended school briefly, enrolled under a false name. Devlin gave him a cell phone, access to a computer, the freedom to move around Kirkwood, under the threat of death hanging over every moment. To the neighbors, they were just an odd pair, a middle-aged man and his teenage son. Sean Devlin. The boy was quiet, maybe a little strange, but polite. No one suspected anything was wrong. Police officers actually spoke to Sean multiple times during those years. Once when kids were playing too loudly in the parking lot. Another time during a minor incident in the neighborhood. Each time, Sean said nothing. Did nothing. The officers had no idea they were standing face to face with a missing child. Why didn't Sean run? Why didn't he scream for help? This question would haunt the nation after his rescue. Some people couldn't understand it. They asked cruelly why he didn't just leave, as if escaping trauma and psychological control were as simple as walking out a door. But Sean lived under constant terror. Devlin had convinced him that his family would die if he tried to escape. That he would be killed. That no one was looking for him anyway. That he'd been forgotten. The psychological abuse was as effective as any physical chain. Sean even went online. In a moment of desperate courage, he visited a website his parents had created dedicated to finding him. And there, anonymously, he posted a message that breaks the heart. How long are you planning to look for your son? It was both a plea and a test. Did they still care? Were they still searching? The answer was yes, but Sean never knew it. As the years passed, Sean adapted to survive. He learned to play the role Devlin demanded. He learned to shut down his real identity and become Sean Devlin. It was the only way to stay alive. And all the while, Michael Devlin's terrible hunger remained unsatisfied. As Sean grew older, entered puberty, began looking more like a teenager than a child, Devlin wanted something Sean could never be again, younger. He needed a replacement. And that need would lead to the unraveling of everything. January 8, 2007. Rural Franklin County, Missouri. 13-year-old Ben Ownby stepped off his school bus near his home in Beaufort, Missouri. It was a Monday afternoon, cold but clear. Ben started walking the short distance to his house. He never arrived. Ben's parents immediately knew something was wrong. Their son was responsible, predictable. When he didn't come home, they called the police right away. And when officers arrived and began canvassing the area, they caught a break that hadn't existed in Sean Hornbeck's case 4 years earlier. Mitchell Holtz, one of Ben's friends, had also gotten off the bus that afternoon. Mitchell watched as Ben walked toward home, and Mitchell saw the truck. A white Nissan pickup with a camper shell. It slowed down near Ben. And then Ben vanished. Mitchell ran home and told his parents what he'd seen. He provided a detailed description of the vehicle. The make. The model. Distinguishing features. It was the exact kind of concrete lead that investigators dream about. The FBI immediately issued an Amber Alert. Television stations broadcast the description. Officers across Missouri began searching for a white Nissan pickup. Franklin County Sheriff Gary Tolk held a press conference, his voice urgent. We have reason to believe Ben Ownby was taken against his will. We need the public's help. If you see a white Nissan pickup truck with a camper shell, contact authorities immediately. This time, technology was on the victim's side. The alert spread rapidly. And within days, tips began pouring in. One tip stood out. A caller told police they'd seen a white Nissan pickup matching the description at the Kirkwood apartment complex. The truck belonged to a resident there, Michael John Devlin, a 41-year-old manager at a local Imo's Pizza restaurant. On January 12, 2007, just 4 days after Ben's abduction, a task force of FBI agents, Franklin County deputies, and local police converged on the apartment complex in Kirkwood. They had a search warrant. They had the element of surprise. They were there for Ben Ownby, hoping against hope they'd find him alive. Officers approached apartment 40F. They knocked on the door. Michael Devlin answered, looking nervous but compliant. "We have a warrant to search this apartment," an officer told him. Devlin stepped aside. And that's when they saw him. A teenage boy with sandy blonde hair, sitting on the couch in the living room. He looked frightened but unharmed. "What's your name?" an officer asked. The boy hesitated. Then answered, "Sean Devlin." Officer Doug Wood, a sergeant with the Kirkwood Police Department, felt something click in his mind. Sean. Missouri. Missing child. He'd seen that name before, years ago. "What's your real name?" Wood pressed gently. Another pause. Then, quietly, "Sean Hornbeck." The officers froze. For a moment, no one could believe what they were hearing. Sean Hornbeck? The boy who'd been missing since 2002. That Sean Hornbeck? And then Ben Ownby emerged from a bedroom, alive and physically unharmed. Two missing boys. Both alive. Both in the same apartment. One of them missing for 4 days, the other for more than 4 years. Michael Devlin was immediately arrested and taken into custody without incident. He said nothing, his face expressionless, as officers handcuffed him and read him his rights. The Missouri Miracle, as it would come to be known, had just occurred. In Richwoods, Missouri, Pam and Craig Akers received a phone call that changed everything. "We've found Sean. He's alive." Pam collapsed. For years, 2 months, and 6 days of searching, hoping, praying, despairing, and now this. Her son was alive. Actually, truly alive. The Akers family immediately drove to St. Louis, where Sean was being evaluated at a hospital. When Pam first saw her son, she barely recognized him. He'd left as an 11-year-old boy. He'd returned as a 15-year-old young man, taller, older, changed in ways that had nothing to do with physical growth. But she knew his eyes. She knew her child. The reunion was emotional and complicated. Sean was withdrawn, traumatized, struggling to process what was happening. He'd spent 4 years believing he would never see his family again, believing that his parents might not even want him back after everything that had happened. Ben Ownby, meanwhile, was reunited with his own family. He'd only been missing for 4 days, but those 4 days had been filled with horror. His rescue was nothing short of miraculous, caught before Devlin could fully implement whatever long-term plans he had. The media descended on Missouri with a frenzy. The story had everything: a child missing for years, found alive in a stunning rescue, a serial predator arrested, 2 families made whole again. Press conferences were held. Franklin County Sheriff Gary Tolk stood before cameras, his voice thick with emotion. "Today is a good day. Today we brought 2 boys home." FBI Special Agent Roland Corvington described the moment they found the boys. "We went there looking for 1 missing child and found 2. It's an outcome we prayed for but honestly didn't expect." Mitchell Holtz, the 13-year-old friend who'd seen Ben's abduction and provided the crucial description of the truck, was hailed as a hero. His quick thinking and detailed observations had literally saved 2 lives. But even as the nation celebrated, difficult questions emerged. Where had Sean been all this time? Why hadn't he escaped? What had happened to him during those 4 years? And most painfully, how had Michael Devlin kept him hidden in plain sight for so long? Michael John Devlin was a monster hiding behind an ordinary face. As investigators dug into his background, a disturbing picture emerged. Devlin had lived in the Kirkwood area for years, working at Imo's Pizza, keeping to himself. Neighbors described him as quiet, unremarkable, sometimes a little odd but never threatening. He'd been hiding in plain sight all along. Forensic teams descended on apartment 40F. They seized computers, documented evidence of the crimes committed in those rooms, interviewed neighbors, and built an airtight case against Devlin. What they discovered was a carefully constructed lie. Devlin had presented Sean to the world as his son. The boy went by Sean Devlin. He'd attended school briefly. He'd interacted with neighbors. Police had even spoken to him on multiple occasions, and never suspected anything was wrong. But the truth was far darker. Behind closed doors, Devlin subjected Sean to years of sexual abuse, physical violence, and psychological torture. He controlled Sean through fear, through threats against his family, through the systematic destruction of hope. Investigators interviewed Sean carefully, sensitively, understanding that he was a victim who'd survived unimaginable trauma. Sean described the first month after his abduction, the restraints, the duct tape, the explicit death threats. He explained how Devlin had convinced him that his family would be murdered if he tried to escape. "Not a day went by that I didn't think he would kill me," Sean told investigators. The psychological hold Devlin had over Sean was complete. It's a phenomenon experts recognize in long-term abduction cases. The victim adapts to survive, internalizes the captor's threats, and loses the ability to see escape as a viable option. But Devlin's evil hadn't stopped with Sean. As Sean grew older, Devlin had gone hunting again. He'd targeted Ben Omby, another young boy from a rural area, another child who fit Devlin's preferred victim profile. The FBI investigated whether there might be other victims. They looked at other missing children cases in Missouri and surrounding states. While no definitive connections were made to additional abductions, the question haunted investigators: had Devlin done this before? Charges were filed swiftly. Kidnapping, child sexual abuse, forcible sodomy. More than 70 counts in total across 2 counties. Devlin's trial would never happen. Facing overwhelming evidence and the prospect of the death penalty, his attorneys negotiated a plea agreement. October 6, 2007. 5 years to the day after Sean Hornbeck's abduction. Michael John Devlin stood before a judge in Washington County and pleaded guilty to all charges against him. No trial. No lengthy legal battle. Just a guilty plea and an acknowledgement of his horrific crimes. The courtroom was packed with victims' families, law enforcement officers, and members of the public who wanted to see justice served. Pam Akers gave a victim impact statement, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. She described the 4 years of hell her family had endured. The sleepless nights. The desperate searches. The false hope from a cruel psychic. The agony of not knowing. "You stole my son's childhood," she told Devlin. "You stole 4 years of his life and you stole those same years from our family. You deserve every second of the sentence you're about to receive." Ben Omby's family spoke as well, describing the trauma their son had suffered in just 4 days and expressing gratitude that he'd been found before Devlin could destroy his life the way he'd destroyed Sean's. Michael Devlin showed no emotion. He stood silently, his face a blank mask, as the judge delivered the sentence. 74 life terms. Plus 2,020 additional years. The total, 4,240 years in prison. Devlin would not be eligible for parole until the year 2107, when he would be 100 years old. Effectively, a death sentence without execution. He was immediately transferred to Missouri's prison system, where he would spend the rest of his natural life behind bars. In April 2011, Devlin received a brutal reminder that even in prison, justice finds a way. A fellow inmate, enraged by the nature of Devlin's crimes against children, attacked him with a homemade ice pick. Devlin survived, but the message was clear: even among criminals, there are hierarchies of evil, and child predators occupy the lowest rung. Michael Devlin remains incarcerated today, a cautionary tale about the monsters who walk among us, wearing ordinary faces. The aftermath of trauma is never simple. There's no magical moment when everything becomes okay again. For Sean Hornbeck, returning home meant rebuilding a life from scratch. He was 15 years old but had missed 4 crucial years of childhood. He'd missed birthdays, holidays, milestones. He'd missed school, social development, and normal adolescent experiences. More than that, he carried invisible scars that would take years to heal. Sean's family respected his privacy and his need to process what had happened to him in his own time, in his own way. Pam and Craig made it clear they would never pressure him to talk about his ordeal. They would support whatever he needed to heal. In rare interviews, Sean has been remarkably poised and mature. He's acknowledged that he still hasn't told his parents everything that happened during those 4 years, and he may never fully share those details. Some burdens are too heavy to pass on to the people you love. But he's also spoken about resilience, about choosing to move forward rather than remaining trapped in the past. "I had to rebuild my life from scratch," Sean said in one interview. "Everything I was before I was taken, I had to learn to be that person again, or find a new version of that person." Ben Ownby, rescued after just 4 days, also faced a difficult recovery. He'd been sexually assaulted during his captivity, and the trauma of those 4 days would stay with him. But being found quickly, before Devlin could systematically break down his identity the way he'd done with Sean, gave Ben a better chance at recovery. Both boys received counseling, support, and the space to heal at their own pace. The Sean Hornbeck Foundation continued its work for several years after Sean's rescue, helping other families of missing children. In 2013, the foundation officially closed, and its mission was taken over by the Missouri Valley Sean Hornbeck Search and Rescue Team. Sean has largely stayed out of the public eye, choosing privacy over celebrity. He's entitled to that privacy. He's entitled to build a life on his own terms, free from the burden of being forever defined by his victimization. The last we know, Sean is living his life quietly, working, spending time with family, and moving forward. He survived. Against impossible odds, he survived. The case of Sean Hornbeck reminds us of several profound truths. First, that hope matters. Pam Akers never stopped searching for her son, never stopped believing he might still be alive. Her foundation helped countless other families during their darkest hours. Her refusal to give up kept Sean's name alive, kept investigators engaged, kept the possibility of rescue real. Second, that one observant witness can change everything. Mitchell Holtz, a 13-year-old boy who paid attention and gave a detailed description of a truck, saved 2 lives. His actions directly led to Ben Ownby's rescue and Sean Hornbeck's discovery. Heroism sometimes comes in the form of simply being alert and speaking up. Third, that survivors of trauma are not defined by what was done to them. Sean Hornbeck is not Michael Devlin's victim. He is Pam and Craig's son. He is a survivor. He is a person who experienced unimaginable horror and chose to keep living, keep growing, keep moving forward. Fourth, that the psychological control exerted by abusers is real and powerful. The question "why didn't he just leave?" ignores the reality of trauma, fear, and manipulation. Sean couldn't just leave any more than a person can simply decide not to have a broken leg. The control was psychological, but it was as real as physical chains. And finally, that some miracles are real. Against astronomical odds, Sean Hornbeck came home alive. Ben Ownby was rescued before his captor could destroy his identity. 2 boys who could have become statistics instead became survivors. The Missouri miracle wasn't really a miracle at all. It was the result of determined law enforcement, 1 observant witness, good timing, and 2 boys who refused to give up their will to live. Today, both Sean Hornbeck and Ben Ownby are adults, living private lives away from the spotlight that once followed them. They are more than the worst things that happened to them. They are testaments to human resilience. Michael Devlin will die in prison, his name synonymous with evil. But Sean Hornbeck's name means something different. It means hope. It means survival. It means that sometimes, just sometimes, the stories we fear will end in tragedy end instead in reunion. If this story moved you, made you question reality, or left you staring at the edge of what's possible, don't let it fade into silence. Hit like to honor the journey of the missing. Hit share to remind someone else that life is fragile and miraculous. Hit subscribe to stay with us, because here at the Found Files, we uncover the stories the world almost forgot. And before you leave, I want you to do something important. Take a moment and tell me where you are watching from in the comments. Because your presence here matters, and the truth deserves witnesses. Every story has a ripple. Every missing person has a name. Every found file has a lesson. Don't let it be lost.